Okay, let's talk a little bit about student rentals. We've got a lot of clients, whether they're from out of town, that are coming to London. We have a lot of people who, from Toronto especially, look at the values that we have in London around the university and kind of lick their chops and say, well, that's affordable and you can get that kind of income. You've got three. You've got a lot of rentals, but specifically 3 student rentals. They were the first ones that you bought. What do you think about student rentals? The good, the bad, and the ugly. We've all heard all the horror stories, but I've also heard a lot of success stories too. So why don't you talk about yours?
Yeah, I think there's people out there who are a lot better at them than I am. That's for sure. But much like any rental, time in it is what's really going to yield you returns at the end of the day. People like getting student rentals because of the cash flow, right? So they see more per room. One thing I would like to stress on is that, a lot of times you're going to have to really dive deeper into where the income's going, because usually there's a little bit more turnover. More turnover, especially if you're out of town, would mean that you're usually hiring someone to get it rented for you. Not always. Most of the people who are going to do it for you are going to take anywhere from 50% to a month's rent. So if that's the case, and you have to do that every year instead of, say, every 2-3 years for a tenant in another type of rental, well, that directly affects your income, right? So if you're making, let's say you got a 5-bedroom student rental at $500 a room, you're looking at $2,500 per year, $30,000 a year, minus your costs and everything, depending on how much you put down and your mortgage and whatnot. That, let's say at $2,500 a year, to rent it, if it's every single year, is going to hit your bottom line pretty good. Typically, insurance costs are a little bit higher for student rentals too, depending on how close they are to which university. And since Fanshaw's riots the one year, it can be pretty tough to get insurance on some of those that are that close. But Western's pretty good. Mine, we overpaid for insurance the first 3 years till we just called around, and we were paying very high. I can't remember the exact numbers, but they were high. So that's something, is the turnover can be pretty hectic. Come May 1st or September 1st, like when you're turning over and you're getting 5 students out and 5 students in, you're dealing with, maybe potentially 10 parents on one day. It can get pretty hectic. Maintenance, as far as, the parties and things like that can go. I know one year we had some kids on homecoming. We just get a call and the sink snapped. So I don't know who was in the bathroom doing what, but there's water everywhere. And these are the kind of calls you can get. At the end of the day, though, the nice thing about student rentals, if you're really good at managing them, yes, you will get a lot of cash flow, more than your typical family rental. I like around Western more, but I know a lot of people that have been very successful around Fanshawe. I know we just had a client who bought one around Fanshawe, and they do offer some better cash flow around there. Western, you're typically going to get more appreciation down the road, from what I can see. Old North, always been a really strong market, a lot of development around the university. Now, when I first got into it, which would have been, I think, I would want to say about 8 years ago almost now, maybe 7 for my first one, 6 for my second. It was a little bit easier to get them rented. It's pretty competitive now. You've seen the, Southside built that beautiful student residence off Sarnia, and you see a lot of big money coming in from Toronto who are putting out some really high-end rentals. So, the age of the slumlord is kind of gone. You have to have some serious money to put in these things if you want to get the good tenants. That's made it a little more difficult.
The city's tightened up a little bit on the licensing as well.
And you probably have actually more experience with that than I do. Even though I own them, you've shown a lot more of them, and you've been through those offer situations where you actually have to, dive into that aspect of the sale. As far as licensing goes, it's usually, I've never had a problem with the city. They just send out something, you fill it out, you send it back. I don't even know if mine would be, they'd be grandfathered in certain ways, but those aspects are what make them tough. So, you got your high turnover. Logistically speaking, the move-in day can be pretty hectic, clean up and things like that. The actual vacancies a little bit tougher nowadays, and obviously if there's a bunch of units up, what's that do? Landlords are just going to say, hey, I'll do it for cheaper. Yeah. That being said, they're still good. If you have a really good student rental, you will get very good tenants and you'll make good money. The problem is around Western, I bought mine for $225 in 2009 or something like that, 2008, and it literally, I think we had a client to buy one for $290 a couple years ago, but I haven't seen anything under like $350. You know, like there's a couple that are makeshift 4 bedrooms, you know, choppy that'll go in the low 3s, but you know, that's the problem. You want to get, we are now pushing up, but if you look at markets like Toronto and Hamilton, again, theirs are way higher. So people from Toronto come here and they think, you know, it's a great deal. And not that it isn't, right? And you can get that cash flow and you can get the high-end students, but you know, I've found vacancy rates are definitely hurting nowadays. The maintenance can be tougher. You know, if I can go back, I would buy, my own personal take on it is that I would buy probably a, you know, more high-end multi-family, not high-end, but like more units in one building. That's just how my take on it. But lots of good with it. You know, you can get a lot of appreciation, right? And you're never gonna go down around Western, right? Downtown core, like they're good rentals. So
yeah, so the harsh reality, I think, also with rentals, and the scary part, the risky part, is that vacancies are a reality.
Absolutely.
So what's your experience with vacancies?
Vacancies will hit you really hard with student rentals because typically it's a higher dollar percentage, or sorry, dollar value that you're spending on the property. Like let's say you get a student rental, like we've talked about, probably into the mid 3s, maybe 400,000. I mean, you're looking at likely pretty close to a $2,000 payment if you're putting less down. And you know, with that comes higher taxes because Old North, we know it's a high tax area. Old North around the university, high values, high assessed values. So my experience with vacancies and student rentals is they suck because if you have a vacancy on a student rental, you know, you're usually getting hit with the whole thing. Whereas on maybe a duplex, triplex, or you know, as many units as you want to go, you know, you're going to be able to kind of, not consolidate, it's another word, subsidize your loss with the other units bringing in income. So, you know, like we mentioned in the video, is, you know, you look at your turnover, right? You look at how many times you may have to pay a month's or a half month's rent out. You look at some of your maintenance costs, and you look at vacancy. Like if you don't rent a whole house by a certain date, by May, you might have to wait 4 months till September. And if you don't get it rented by September, you might have to wait till May. So those are big gaps, or you might have to throw a student or two in there. It's not. Now, I know some people are very successful and can rent it by the room. I've never had any luck with that. Now, I've never tried really hard to do it that way. I always like to find a group. You know, we found, we've had a group of athletes or a group of friends in ours before, but, you know, it can be very difficult if you got to carry, I mean, think about that, right? Like, let's say you make $30,000 a year and you got to carry 4 months through the summer at $2,000 a month. I mean, that's $8,000. You're down to $22,000. If you had to get that rented for September, you're down to, you know, $20,000. If you're debt servicing on $400,000, like let's just pull numbers here. Like let's say you're at $1,500 a month on a mortgage. I mean, that's $18,000. So you are already losing money unless you're plus utilities at that. If you're vacant, you know, like you're not making any money on that. Now you're paying down your mortgage and you're probably appreciating pretty good, but nobody wants to just take a loss every month because you have a potential appreciation every year, right? Like that has to be a very, very strong appreciation for that to be an investment. And a lot of times that's speculation and a whole nother topic. But that's just something that, you know, be aware of when it comes to student rentals. I'm not saying that they're not a good investment, because they are. I mean, mine have been pretty good to me. But it can be tough, and you can run into issues that, you know, can be challenging for any investor, right?
So especially a new one, to jump in for the first one. To
Yeah,
go with a home run like a 6-bedroom. Would you say, in your experience, go for a 6-bedroom? You might have the opportunity to yield more cash flow, but is it better to go for maybe like a 4-bedroom that's a bit less money?
Yeah.
Because it's easier to manage those tenants, easier to find groups.
Yeah, my personal experience is a 4-bedroom rental is a perfect one. But you know what? It's hard to find because most sellers of student rentals in the London area, at least, they were, you know, when they bought them when the rules, like we've talked about, weren't so strict, and there were 6, 7, 8 bedrooms, and they rented a lot more, you know, 20 years ago. From what I heard, I mean, I wasn't doing it 20 years ago, but from what I hear from different investors and, you know, from what you see when you're showing property is, you know, obviously it works. So now it's a lot different. There's more supply. You look at the apartment that just went up on Richmond, right? Like there's more supply of high-end 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom units, even the houses. So it's hard to find sellers who will sell it to you for a value that would work just renting 3 or 4 bedrooms. But, you know, rule of thumb, less bedrooms, easier to rent, more groups, less headaches, less turnover, because if you have 6 people in a house, chances are by second year, third year, fourth year, a few of them aren't going to be getting along so well. Like kids, we've all lived with a bunch of friends in our life. I mean, if you've been in university, and it's not always just perfect. You know, so the more people, the more problems. You know, once you kick out 2 people, well, how do you get another group of 6? So, you know, that's something that I would say, try and the less rooms, the better, but it's hard to find them for sure.